Every autumn, fans all over this nation and beyond gather to cheer on their favorite teams. Many forces draw on these fans, but perhaps none of them stronger than hometown pride. So I want you to imagine your hometown team being taken away from you after 50 years. That, my friends, is the story of Cleveland fans when the Browns left Baltimore in 1995. A sports-scarring moment indeed. But do not take my word for it. I brought in lifelong Brown superfan Chuck Smith to tell you his firsthand experience, a journey that tells the rich history of Cleveland football and what it meant when that history was almost destroyed for good. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow on all socials at KPierceTV, but above all else, please enjoy this week's episode of
Cleveland Browns apparently set to skip town at the end of the year and move to Baltimore.
I hate to admit it, but I cried.
It's a great stadium, a great city, great fans are here. It would be a tragedy, but we can't speculate.
If you're a Browns fan, you're a Browns fan for life.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a signed contract in hand.
When I was 3 years old, my father sat me down in front of the TV set and he said, "Son, this is our team." And it's been my team ever since. Kind of sort of in the middle of Jim Brown. He was drafted in 57 and he played until 66, maybe. Because I had my father to narrate for me, he would talk me through the runs that Jim would have because, he just looks like a truck running over people. But the thing that my dad pointed out to me that always stuck with me was, he said, "Chucky, he never let anybody know that he was hurt. He got up off the ground the same way every single time. He got up so slowly and kind of walked back to the huddle like he would never be able to run again. And then they give him the ball and it was Mack truck time again."
The connections that sports form always go beyond the field. But the bonds that are strengthened by sports is exemplified perfectly by Coach and his father.
First of all, my father told me the history of the Browns. The first coach and the founder of the Browns was Paul Brown. Paul Brown had been a football coach in high school at the famous Massillon High School, and then he coached at Ohio State. And then when the league that came around, the All-American Conference, he decided that Ohio needed a professional football team. At that time, black players were not allowed to play in the NFL. And the teams that were starting in this new league, they were doing the same kind of segregation. Paul Brown said, "Look, some of the best players I've ever coached are black." Well, he didn't use black back then, of course. And so he recruited some of the players that he coached at Ohio State, but he also went out and got some others. And the first one that he recruited was Marion Motley. So my father explained to me that at a time where, even though he was a decorated World War II veteran, at a time where there were places that he couldn't go to eat, where he couldn't stay, here was a man that was going against the system. And the Browns have always been that way. I mean, even now, we have a black general manager. We have a woman assistant general manager. We have a black assistant general manager. They are very active in the program to train young black coaches for down the line. That has always been a part of why I'm attached to the Browns. As part of the family thing. Then going back to my dad, believe it or not, there was a time when I was a knucklehead. Really? Oh yeah, hell yeah. Me and my foolishness, I got angry with my father, and we essentially stopped talking to each other except for we could talk about the Browns. Every Sunday during football season, we would either watch or listen to the game with each other. We would talk about the Browns. It was the only thing that kept us communicating. Thankfully, I came to my senses, apologized, and we reconciled long before he died. But the thing that kept my relationship alive was the Cleveland Browns.
Unfortunately, no talk of the history of the Browns is complete without talking about some playoff heartbreak. So we have to start, of course, with the drive.
We were down most of that game. And then we get to the fourth quarter and start a wonderful drive. And then Bernie hits Brian Brennan with a a beautiful crossing route, and he scores. And when he scored, I just knew we'd won. And then the kickoff. And the Broncos blow it, and they're on the 1 yard line. They have 99 yards to go. Marty Schottenheimer ordered his defensive coordinator to not let anything get over their heads. And so Elway ate them up for the 99 yards. The play for the touchdown illustrates how football's a game of inches because the pass was almost deflected. It whizzed right by the defensive end's hand. Okay, so we're going to overtime, no big deal, right? We moved the ball, but not sufficiently. They get the ball. You know, it was a pretty stout defense this time. And so they're going to try a long field goal. And my hand on the Bible, witness to God, Carlos missed that field goal, and he missed it then, he missed it now.
Unfortunately, again, NFL history will also remember that kick as a make. But a few years later, the Browns had another chance to take out the Broncos in a 1987 AFC Championship game. And the name of the game gives away the ending, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic.
When we had them in Denver, again, we were behind. Ernest Biner was, you know, the heart and soul of that team. You know, he ran the ball like a maniac. He could catch the ball. I mean, he was everything. He was everything for us. We are in the red zone. It's a third down. Browns run a trap. Beautiful. Opens up. Biner's on his way in. I'm jumping up, getting ready to scream touchdown. And then all of a sudden you see this commotion behind him, and then he turns and you see his head turn, and I'm like, no, he didn't fumble. Please tell me he didn't. And yeah, he did. Come to find out years later, when there's a group of that team, then they're talking, Bernie said that the trap play was fine, but one of the things that should have happened that didn't happen was Webster Slaughter was supposed to run a must route, one where he just gets outside and pulls his defender with him. Guess who the defender was that caused the fumble?
No.
Yes.
No.
Because Webb got excited. Webb got excited because he knew the play was going to work, and instead of running his route like he's supposed to and watching it, you remember what Coach Nee used to say, don't watch it now, watch it on Saturday, right? All right, so instead of Webster watching the film, they do it on Monday. On Monday, he turned around and looked. His man comes down, causes the fumble. Linebacker theirs, I believe, recovered the ball. And again, I'm devastated.
So, as someone who was coached by you, I can only imagine your reaction the following day if one of your receivers would have done that. You had one job.
Right, they still be exercising. to this day, still be running. Still be running.
God. So happy we got that laugh in, because this is where the episode takes a turn. I had to ask, after all that history we discussed, after the passionate blood, sweat, and tears fans poured into that franchise for 5 decades, when did he hear his beloved Browns might be moving?
In November of 1994, the Browns were at home and they were going to play the Houston Oilers. And so somehow I got the idea that this would be a perfect game for me to take my kids to. So loaded them up in the minivan. My younger brother, who's no longer with us, we all drove to Cleveland. And so as I get into Ohio, got to turn on the radio, you know, and talk radio wasn't the same, sports radio wasn't the same back then. But on the station that was the home of the Browns, they were talking about that the negotiations with Modell and the city seemed to be going all right, but there's a rumor that he's going to pull the team. And I'm like, oh, come on. You guys are just trying to get somebody all upset. And so I dismissed it. The noise started getting louder and louder and louder. And then I think there was an article in Sports Illustrated. And then Modell snuck out of town, came up to Baltimore, and made the announcement in Baltimore with Governor Glendening. And what I remember most about that time is the cover of Sports Illustrated right after the announcement. they had a depiction of, at that point, that was when the moniker of dogs had really become identical with the Browns' identity. And so they had a picture of a dog in a football helmet and a comical figure of Modell hitting the dog in the stomach, gut punch. And that's what it felt like. Cleveland Browns is an iconic NFL franchise. Cleveland Browns did stuff to help the league. The merger with the NFL and the AFL, there had to be teams that were willing to go out of the conference that eventually became the NFC. There were NFL teams that had to go into the conference that would be the AFC, that was predominantly with the old AFL teams. And the Browns, Colts, Steelers, they all volunteered so that the merger could go through. It was Art Modell, may he rot in hell, came up with the idea of Monday Night Football. And the other owners, they didn't like the idea. They poo-pooed it, and nobody wanted to do the game. And Modell said, okay, well, my team will do it. And that's how we got to be the first team on NFL Monday Night Football. This is a deeply rooted in NFL history team that's now gone.
And unlike another team that we'll discuss on a later date, this team's owner had the courtesy or audacity, depending on where you're sitting, to hold a press conference to announce the team's move.
I turned it on and I watched probably 2 minutes of it, because to see that clown up there smiling like that, I couldn't take it. So I shut off the TV and I said to myself, I'll read about it tomorrow, which is what I did. Modell's people will tell you that the politics drove him out of Cleveland, that the city promised him something that they didn't come through. The city always said, no, everything that we proposed, and we kept asking him what he wanted, we could never get a straight answer from him. The big obstacle through the whole thing was Cleveland Municipal Stadium, which was a pit, but it was our pit. See, this is gonna be strange. The special thing to me about Cleveland Municipal Stadium, well, first of all, there were pillars where if you got a seat behind the pillar, you were done. You couldn't see anything. But the men's bathroom, there weren't urinals. It was a trough. Just one big, I'm telling the truth. Just one big trough, man. You talk about communal? So that's one way to bring it. Yeah, that's right. People be in there, doing their business and barking.
It's funny how nostalgia makes you fond of the smallest things, right? Even a trough seems like a throne, and pillars come with 4K X-ray vision. With that said, what were the emotions like for that last home game in that aforementioned pit?
I hate to admit it, but I cried. I cried because after the game was over, the players went around the stadium, shaking hands with fans. It was one of those moments that showed how the city was tied to the team and vice versa. Of course, you saw the people in the stands, the season ticket owners who had had the same seats for eons. They took their seats. They brought. What amazed me was people had thought about this beforehand, because these clowns, they came with tools. They came with tools, and they unbolted their seats, and they were taking the seats out. Nobody tried to stop them. It was very sad. It was very sad. I'm not going to say tragic, because that's overstepping it. That's overstating it. It was very sad. It was very emotional. The grassroots had already started, as far as people writing congressmen about making sure about trying to get a team back into Cleveland. So that part had already started to happen. The first thing that we did was we petitioned. A petition went around. My name's on it someplace. A petition went around to the league that demanded that the league give us back our team, and some marketing genius said that not only do we get back the team, but we get back our colors, our history, our colors. And that was kind of the catchphrase for that time period where there was the struggle to get the team back. I don't think that the league made a decision to give us back the team until, I want to say 97. It might have been 96, 97, sometime in there. Then it became an issue of when it would happen. Part of the deal was that it wasn't going to be back in Municipal Stadium. That had to be torn down and a new stadium had to be built. Writing letters, signing petitions, contacting Congress people, it was kind of involved.
Now, this is a unique situation that most fans can't relate to. What is it like to not have your favorite team exist for years?
In that space, from 95 until 99, Janice, my wife, loved it. Why? Because on Sundays, I was no longer locked in on NFL football. I found out there's a whole lot. Did you know there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes on Sundays after church during football season? I didn't know, man. I was very, very healthy for my relationship with my wife. We had like 4 years there where I didn't disappear on Sundays for 6 months. That period was interesting because, I'm a football guy, so I'm still engaged, but it wasn't like when the Browns are playing, and I actually got more engaged in college football during that time period. So, but Sundays were different. But I was not going to be a fan of another NFL team. I'm a Browns fan. That's it.
After years of letters, petitions, billboards, that loyalty was rewarded with the Browns returning. Sorta.
I wasn't expecting the team to be bad. The NFL raked us over in terms of, they had done things in a certain way with other expansion teams, with the Panthers and the Jaguars. They had a longer run-up to when they were going to play. The way that the draft was conducted was different. But the team that they were able to cobble together, it had some pretty good veteran players that, those of us delusional in Browns Nation, we thought that was a team that could contend like now. And so, we thought, okay, we can do all right. It was a very bad brand of football. And it was because the league didn't give the Browns the lead time to build the foundation properly. And, we haven't recovered from that.
Now, we can list the Browns' misfortunes between their return and now for hours, but I think we covered that sufficiently. Instead, let's focus on the entry of a man who turned the franchise around from the moment he touched the field. Enter one Mr. Baker Mayfield.
See, I'm not a Baker boy, because you have to also remember that before Baker, those clowns drafted Johnny Manziel. I don't know why the people that are supposed to do this for a living didn't know that Manziel was not going to be an NFL quarterback. He was short, undisciplined. How do you expect something like that to guide a squad? And then we draft Baker, who I viewed as Johnny Manziel too. He's short, undisciplined. This is somebody that you want to be the face of your franchise. So I was not wanting them to draft him. He won me over and then lost me, but he won me over. He started talking about that he knew that he wasn't going to be in Cleveland Brown until he beat Pittsburgh. So that means that he gets us. By all reports, the man works. He goes in, he does his film study, he works. He's a cocky little something or the other, but I like that in a player, particularly if the player can back it up. But of course, what won everybody over was the Jets game. You know, he comes in, quarterback gets hurt, starting quarterback gets hurt. He comes in, his first series, but after that, he was a man on fire. And then they run the Philly special for an extra point. Please, you know, his press conferences were like classic because he would always have a theme for his press conference. Regardless of what was going on, he went in with a theme for what his press conference was going to be. You know, a lot of people were upset by his progressive insurance commercials. I thought that those things were gems. You know, Baker's house. How can you get better? How is anything not better than that?
Ooh, I know it's better than that. How about your first playoff win in 27 years against your hated division rival?
It was like a double whammy because just the week before, we had to beat them in order to make the playoffs. And so we beat them at our house. The voice of the Browns, who unfortunately recently died, his closing statement for that game was, the only thing missing is all of you, because, you know, this happened when during the pandemic, and so the stadium wasn't full. There was just a very few number of fans in the stands, but that was like an iconic moment. We get to the next week, haven't won in Pittsburgh, God, something like 20 years or something like that. And then the first play, nearly an all-pro center, sends a snap straight out of Little League. Just goes over Ben's head, and he's called Big Ben for a reason. I mean, this is a large human being. And the ball, and we score. And it's like 7-0. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be fun. And of course, it was a typical Browns game in the sense that, you know, we couldn't put them away. We go up big. We don't put our heel into their throat. They start coming back, and you start getting that feeling, oh God, here we go again. And you start thinking about all the times that we're right there and something goes wrong. Matter of fact, the last time that we played a playoff game in Pittsburgh, wide receiver Dennis Northcutt drops a pass that would have been a first down that would have closed out the game. Instead, we have to punt. Steelers score, we go home. So you know, all of that stuff. And if a Browns fan ever tells you that they don't think like that, they are lying. because every one of us, when it's like, uh-oh, here we go. So, you know, because of the drive, the fumble, Bottlegate, all of that, every Browns fan, all of those things always come to you in a rush whenever, you know, these kinds of situations. But they held on. Okay. They held on. They won. And you know what the best thing about that game was after the game, the shot of Ben Roethlisberger sitting on the bench crying. I'll take that to my grave.
Wait, was that Big Ben's last game?
That was his last game. That's right.
Ooh,
That's right. Yes.
That feels great.
Yeah, baby. But that was fantastic. That's one of the times where I wish that my father was still alive.
Thank you, and I do mean thank you, to my former coach Chuck Smith for coming on and sharing his story. And thank you to you specifically, for watching this video. But I couldn't let him leave without asking the question. If Art Modell were sitting next to him, what would he say? Post-credit scene, go.
I think what I would ask him is, you know, why did you lie? Why did you lie? Why did you try to say that the city wouldn't give you the support that you needed? And then the second question would be, do you now admit that it was your fault that you couldn't make the team work based on the fact that you had to sell to Steve Biscotti? And you know, I would love for him to admit that the issue wasn't the city of Cleveland, the fans of Cleveland, the economics of the NFL. I would love for him to admit that was his inability as an owner. That's why whenever it comes up and they try to get him in the Hall of Fame, I'm like, are you people on narcotics? Put the pipe down and step away. This person, yes, he did do a lot for the NFL as far as marketing is concerned and things of that nature, but he did more damage than he did good. So that's what I'd ask him.